to this computer. And we are recording. Excellent. Very good. So, for those of you who may not know me, I'm seeing a lot of familiar names, a lot of familiar faces here this evening. My name is Paul Blanchard. I am the founder of Whole Body Mindset, former president of a company called Habit Finder that my father and I had the incredible opportunity to run together for about a decade or so, which was an incredible adventure and amazing. That's a technology that we built over at Habit Finder that I still use to this day in a lot of the work that I get to do with entrepreneurs and executives. But let's talk a little bit, diving right into a couple things right off the bat. One, a little elephant talk. Okay. And this is actually a method that I'll teach clients how to use. It's amazing the a number of unspoken social agreements we have in our relationships, like how often we assume that do-overs are not allowed in conversation with other people, when really, if you had a conversation that didn't go the way you wanted it to, every single one of you could pull out your phone and text that person or call them, which used to be what we did before a text, which is now rude to do before a text. And you could say, hey, remember that talk we had earlier today or yesterday? Could I have a do-over? Like, you're actually allowed to do that. And so, in terms of elephant talk, which is just talking about what you're actually thinking about rather than pretending you're not thinking about it and talking anyway, in terms of elephant talk, there are actually incredibly complex formulas for how I should do this presentation tonight. Why? Because I'd really like you to invest with me eventually. And I say eventually because that eventually would be when value is received, value is ascertained and felt, and you'd like to make an investment in return of that value for more value. So that eventually could be tonight, that could be days from now, that could be years from now. I'm really good with any of those. But I want to tell you, this presentation is not formulated in the way that it should be if that is really my ultimate objective. Because it's not my ultimate objective. My ultimate objective is to connect with you tonight, to share some stuff that has been hard fought to be able to be confident in, that has been hard fought to trust for someone that wants to do something similar in principle to what I do and would like to do it with less effort, would like to do it with greater levels of success. And so I'd like to share that, and I'd like to leave you better than I found you. And I'd rather spend more time just getting to be with you and share and speak and teach than know that the first thing that I should do right off the bat is establish a little bit of rapport, then talk about who this is for, who this is not for, so you feel like I've been like the fortune teller and said a few things that, oh, that's totally me, so I can get some unconscious buy-in, so I can use some different techniques, NLP, and different things, so that by the end of this, you have been conditioned to say yes to what I have to offer at the end. Not really interested in that. I'm actually not really good at it. It just doesn't sit right for me. I've tried. I've really tried. I've tried to put hours into blocking and framing presentations like this, the way that it's supposed to be. And it just, it's like hitting the boundary on operation over and over and over again. And the ones that I throw together with like 5 bullet points and like, hey, let's spend some good time together because I'm pretty sure I've got some stuff that'll serve you because it's served thousands of other people. And let's just go from there, see how it goes. So if you guys are good with that, if you guys are good with like, let's actually just talk about this stuff, you can actually ask me questions. We don't have a rigid agenda to keep up so that I have this conditioned and blocked and framed just the right way to get the biggest investment possible from the end of this conversation. Then you're in the right place. You're in the right place. I am surrendering income tonight to do that. I believe that. I've watched those techniques work. I've watched them pay off. I've watched a very similar room get spoken to in a certain way, and then a very similar room get spoken to a different way, and huge differences financially. But also, I'm okay with that, and I hope by the end of tonight you can see why I'm okay with that. Part of the journey from hustle to harmony is playing a longer game in the revenue, playing a longer game in the income you want to develop. Because a lot of the stuff out there that gets your attention on social media and online for how to build your business, how to get clients, how to do these things, is primarily focused on the finish line being the transaction. And we've added some upgrades and some really nice sounding, humanistic, we care, empathetic language, but it's still based on a problem solution premise, which only works in a dysregulated nervous system. So they are taking advantage of a dysregulated nervous system to somehow offer a solution for your dysregulated nervous system. This is one of the reasons why most of us that are frustrated with coaches and gurus and influencers and whatever else have realized there's a big difference between finding something and investing in it because there's a part of you going, oh, this will finally fill in the blank. Okay? And if any of you are here tonight looking for your finally, please don't invest yet. I don't want you to invest from a finally, because that's not a real place. Of course, I could give you tremendous value and you'd probably walk away from that program like you've walked away from so many other programs going, he gave me really good value. It made all the sense in the world. I just couldn't do it. Have any of you ever invested in something like that? Where maybe you didn't want to admit that it was finally they're going to help me X. Finally, I'll be able to Y. Finally, I'll get Z, whatever it is. And then you got into it and the sessions were amazing. The handouts, the journaling prompts, the strategies, whatever it was, were unequivocally helpful conceptually. That you'd have a hard time going to a court of law and proving they didn't add value conceptually. And yet, did it play out the way that you thought it would, the way it was pitched to you that it would? More often than not, most people that do what I do rely on making sure they add genuine value, real guidance, real GPS, turn left on Smith Street, turn right on First Avenue kind of guidance, and a small percentage of people that can actually do it that make up the testimonials on their websites, on their presentations. I'm not here to knock that. I'm not here to knock that at all. I think we need that kind of tactical guidance. We need that kind of Newtonian, your atoms and molecules, just stick to the program and it will work kind of frameworks out there. But it's not my clientele. Okay? I know those frameworks. I know how to do them. Okay? However, my clientele are the ones who can't quite figure out why it didn't work for them the way it did for the 10 people out of 10,000 that they highlighted on stage. Because there's more to the game. There's way more. And I've felt that for 20 years as a coach. I've been doing coaching professionally, paid to do it, for almost 20 years. In different capacities in higher education, real estate, entrepreneurship, business coaching, tech coaching, acquisition strategies, you name it. I've worked in those arenas. And I love it. I love all of it. But at the end of the day, I found myself just continually drawn to more. There's more to this. There's got to be more to this. And it's a really interesting place to go because it's not as profitable as the problem solution basis. Now, if any of you work in the problem solution kind of place, I'm not here asking you to abandon that. I'm just saying there might be more for you too. And rather than trying to keep quiet the more, hey, be quiet, shut up back there. We just need to focus on this stuff because this is what makes us the money. But maybe your soul, we'll call it, I'll use that term loosely with some of you, okay? Maybe your soul is getting a little louder. Maybe the stuff that didn't quite feel like it was you, like it was authentic, is a little more sensitive today than it has been. I've been trying to figure out how to operate in this way confidently for 20 years. And in the last 4, it has felt like I found the first gold mine in San Francisco. Okay? Because something about COVID, energetically, emotionally, psychologically, we could go through a bunch of scientific, we could go through a bunch of mystical, but something has shifted. And that seems to be like the most frustrating and the best part. Has anybody felt this? Like something has shifted and you can't quite explain what it is, but it seems like we're all looking around going, yep, Yep, that doesn't work anymore. Yep. Okay, that doesn't have the same outcome I thought it would anymore. Or wow, there's just something that's different. Can't quite figure it out. Well, these shifts and these changes do not happen quickly. These shifts and these changes do not happen overnight. That's why I'm not here to say, abandon everything. This is the answer. If you don't do this, your house will burn. None of that here. Scarcity is not welcome in this tonight. If there's anything that I say that puts that across, please call me on it. Ask about it. It would be unintentional at best. So, what I want to do is I do want to touch on who this is for just a little bit more specifically. This is for people who want to participate in the game of transformation, whether that's your own transformation, whether that's the transformation of other people, the transformation of organizations. Transformation is my love. It is what I love to dance with. It's what I love to learn about. I'm obsessed with the human experience as it pertains to transformation. There's something so irritating and frustrating and mystical and mysterious and powerful and important about it. And so I've built courses, I've built programs just dedicated to helping people have a greater respect for what transformation actually entails. Because on one level, for example, I don't think it's something that anyone can do on purpose. I also don't think it's something that anyone can do alone. So those are two important things. So we could talk about that alone tonight. But that's who this is for. So I don't want to get picky about what industry you're in. I don't want to get picky about what clientele, what your niche is. But if there's an energy about what you do, where you get up in the morning, or maybe you're up late at night, whatever it is, and there's just part of you that's like, I really want to make an impact. I really want to get deeper with people. I really want to leave a legacy of impact and influence on people. I want to make a difference. Then this is probably a cool place for you to be. And there's some of the stuff that I'll share tonight that may not be right for your calibration. I'm a big believer that the only person that gets to write the manual, the handbook for your life, is you. Okay, I see some clients of mine that are on here tonight, and they've heard me say to them many times before, I will trust you for you more than I will trust me for you. Okay, that's a big part of transformation. That's a big part of making a noticeable, lasting impact on a human life is understanding that we get to participate and dance with each other. We even might get to unlock things in each other. But Michelle, there's nothing I can provide to you that you can't provide to yourself. But that doesn't mean I couldn't be there in support of you being able to provide that. Doesn't mean I couldn't hold a container. Doesn't mean I couldn't ask you a question that doesn't do something inside of you, but it's all happening inside of you. One of the games that's allowed us to get away with some things, so to speak, in how we play the game of lead acquisition or client acquisition or whatever it is because of our economic abundance. It's given us a huge margin for error. We've been able to focus on the finish line of the transaction and then kind of build the parachute on our way down of making sure that it works as well as possible, or at least everybody's calm. And it just has been a little bit more difficult to find that. And it's not, I don't believe necessarily because of the pandemic itself, as much as what that very disruptive season in our civilization seems to have exposed and or sped up. Maybe both. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the dilemma we're experiencing so that regardless of your industry, if you might go through our conversation tonight and find some things to just kind of pick out, kind of what they call eating the fish and spitting out the bones. And for some of you, there might be a little bit of fish, but I'm hoping that it'll be massively valuable. And for some of you, there'll be a lot of fish and less bones. Whatever it is, it's just going to depend on you. So please trust you for you more than me for you. Even if I'm coming across as some well-spoken, articulate authority right now because I postured myself right, or I'm doing the correct gestures that happen to NLP, the whateverness of how you agree with me. I'm not trained in that stuff. I've been accused of it. I say that playfully. but I think that just comes with a certain authenticity and connection with people. So let's talk a little bit about the dilemma that we're facing. Why is it more difficult? Why do we have to work so much more for similar results as our economic margin for error seems to be tightening? Where the deeply embedded ideology of consumerism is actually becoming less attractive, where we'll just buy it and figure it out. Or I just need to keep buying and I'll find my way to so and so. Just they spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on themselves to get there, and I've only spent 10, so I need to keep going. And so we find ourselves in frustrating places buying things that in and of themselves made sense in the heuristic that it was delivered to you. Now, heuristic is a term that I learned a little while back that makes me sound way smarter than I should. Here's how I can simply put what a heuristic is. A heuristic is taking a large scope of something and sectioning out a little piece of it to make it more manageable. Okay, so like chess. Chess is won and lost in heuristics. No chess master will consider the whole board. They'll consider just a small section of the board and a specific heuristic they're trying to accomplish. So they'll only pay attention to the few options and the few pieces that have to do with that heuristic. And then when those shift, what makes them great is not knowing every possible move. It's just knowing which heuristic to move to. Does this make sense? Let me know if that's, Molly, is that too much? Did I okay, cool. All right. Just a little bit. Okay. It's just breaking things down into bite-sized chunks. That I probably could have just said that, moved on. All right, cool. So in terms of what we've been doing, we've been limiting ourselves in the influence that we can play in unlocking each other by breaking down to isolated heuristics rather than considering a bigger game that are complemented by certain heuristics. And what I mean by that, let me see if I can kind of draw this out for you. I'm going to have some fun with some technology tonight and really hope that it doesn't bite me in the whatever. So share. Yes. Awesome. Okay, cool. This is cool. Applause. Is it working? Everybody? Yeah. Okay, Monica's on it. Okay, sweet. Excellent. Very good. So this is my whiteboard for today because it's way easier to be able to use without my spotlights reflecting off of it. So let me make that a little bit bigger. Okay, let me draw for you just a little bit of a visual as to why the game is more complicated today than it ever has been. Why there's more to consider than there ever has been. So we've got 3 areas to consider. If we're going to play in, guide, facilitate, coach in anything related to transformation, you will want to understand these 3 areas. They're so important. First and foremost is the nervous system. Okay? So over here, we've got the nervous system is the first of the 3 areas. The second one, I'm going to use a couple of terms here, okay, is going to be your soul, or what some might refer to as your higher self. I'm not here to be ideological or theological about the particular names, so just feel free to insert what you would consider that to be. And then finally is going to be what we would refer to as your mind. I would include in that your personality, which is something made up by the mind. And I would also include in that ego. Okay? These are 3 areas that we'll want to take into consideration. We don't need to be the expert in all of these, but we will certainly want to be aware of their functions, of their limitations, of their language, if we're going to want to connect with people in a way that doesn't require more and more hustle to get a net similar result. Now, what's interesting about the nervous system, also referred to as the gut, we could put here as well, is let's talk a little bit about the gifts here, okay? In fact, I'm going to do this because I can. We're going to tighten these up a little bit. So we've got nervous system and or gut over here. Let's talk about the gifts. What are the primary gifts that each of these three areas have? The primary gift of the gut is something that we would commonly refer to as instinct. The primary gift of the soul or higher self, you could also put heart here, is intuition. And the gift here, which you could put the head, is creativity. These are, among other things, the primary gifts that these three areas have to offer. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about what blocks these. What gets in the way of these gifts? The primary block to the nervous system is trauma. We could be here for hours to talk about this, but let me just simply say, because there's been huge growth and expansion and understanding in this area, as much as it's become more sensational, we've actually learned a lot more about it. And my favorite approach to this is understanding that trauma is not what happened to you. It's not the story. It's what happened inside of you, which we've actually started to learn that it doesn't have to have been a significant event, depending on how it occurred and what it made you feel inside of you. And so that's a really important understanding to be able to effectively work with trauma. There are those of us out there that have tried to work with trauma as a story. And we have had those moments of catharsis. Well, finally getting to share it out loud in a safe place felt good. It did feel good. And releasing that pressure valve was likely very important. But it is a very consistent loop to stay in if we stay in the loop of stories. I don't want to dive too deep into this tonight. I'm here more to give you things that you can walk away tonight and use. But if any of you would like to go deeper into this, I have other presentations that I do, or we could connect and talk. The biggest block to the soul, the higher self, or the heart are attachments. Attachments are simply the things that we believe that we need to be worthy of love, that we need to survive, that we need these things outside of self to be able to be whole and complete, to be able to be worthy. And then finally, for the head, the mind, the personality, the ego, it's going to be shame. Shame is the biggest block to creativity. Shame is the biggest block to your ideas, to your inspiration. It is the deeply embedded belief that something about you is not okay. Something about you is wrong. This got taught to most of us pre-verbal. This got taught to most of us when we were very little. And it isn't necessarily because it was taught to us on purpose. You know, the example that we've heard of before is you could be playing with your mom's keys when you were 18 months old, and she was worried you were going to choke on it and saw you and went and pulled it away from you. That gasp and pulled it away. Well, at that time, you have no idea why that happened. You're a primarily sensory creature. And so that gasp, that anxiety, that angst from your mother pulling those keys away from you was a jolt. It was traumatic in some regards. And we have no capacity for processing the logic of that situation other than it looks like there's something wrong and the look is coming towards me, so it must be me that is wrong. I did something that wasn't okay. Love went away as perceived by the sound and the angst. Love went away, and 100,000 years ago, if love went away, we would die. We'd get kicked out of the tribe. There's no way we could survive. And so shame isn't just I'm wrong. Shame is a survival response. It's I'm wrong, I'm not loved, therefore I'm going to die. And that's not necessarily how you experience it in your mind in terms of the actual substance of the thoughts, but that is the intensity in which it can show up and in which it can get into the cracks and the crevices of your life and block you there. So these are the three primary blocks. Also important to understand in these areas is what's the language of these three areas? Okay? What language do they speak? Well, in terms of the nervous system and the gut, it simply speaks the language of sensation. Incredibly acute sensitivity to sensation externally and internally. The soul, the higher self, the heart, we're going to label it for simplicity's sake tonight as an unspoken language. And the head loves the spoken language. And for most of us, that is this one. This right here, okay, we could spend the rest of the night just talking about the drug of explanation. If I could highlight one thing that prevents most people from experiencing greater levels of transformation and growth, it's that. It's that they've gotten way better at explanation than they have at experiencing. In fact, we could probably just talk about the rest of the night, and it'd probably make a pretty significant impact regardless of the relationships you have, the business you're trying to build. And that's a tricky one. But explanation is primarily based in this. It's in the mind. In fact, explanation is the way that the mind tries to take over all the jobs of all three areas. Most of us are mind, personality, ego dominant. In fact, we have programs and tests built around telling us which type is to help substantiate and solidify our identification with only one part of us, that this is who I am. And the more we believe that, the more we need to override and try to do the job of the other three areas and then wonder why we're so burnt out and exhausted all the time. Because this doesn't have the tools to be able to do what these do. It has to try and compensate for it. It has to try and make up for it. And it's exhausting. It's exhausting. But what's the goal? If there was a goal for each of these three areas, and if I told you that if when these three goals are met for these three areas, that there is probably no goal you could possibly set in your life you would not guarantee the accomplishment of. That when these three goals are met for these three areas, you wouldn't be able to set a goal that you couldn't accomplish. The goal of your nervous system is simply safety. Wants to feel safe. Wants to feel like you're allowed to be in your body, let alone to be in your job, let alone to be in the relationship you're in. To be safe. Now, I want you to understand something. This is critical. A little nugget to take away for your relationships, professional or personal. Okay, and this is something I'm talking more and more about with men, by the way. But just to keep in mind, I think this is important for all of you. And that is that there is a huge difference between safety and protection. I can be protected and still not feel safe. I can be in a war and have tanks and soldiers in front of me protecting on the front lines and still not feel safe. I think it's really important that we understand the difference between those two, both in our own role in relationships, professional and personal, and in being able to understand what we are experiencing in our life. And to be really careful that we are not justifying protection for a lack of safety. Okay? Just really important to consider. Very sensitive subject, I've found, in some of the places I've gone with men and women. It can be a very sensitive place to go, but just giving you permission just to chew on that in your own world, see what comes up for you, what kind of insights, what kind of openness gets to be experienced when you separate those two. It's called decoupling, and it's an extraordinary thing to do for the nervous system, is to actually decouple ideas. Okay, if we come back here really quick. When I talked about how the mind starts to take over the job of the other two, one of the things that it starts to do is the mind starts creating words and gives them greater and greater meaning. Okay? That's what emotions are. Emotions are words that the mind created to make up for the sensations of the nervous system. Emotions aren't necessarily sensations. They're labels we put on a jar of an infinite number of sensations. Because we want a heuristic. We want a bite-sized chunk. And because the mind is trying to override the gut and the nervous system, it can't possibly experience the sensations, so it reacts to the sensations, slaps a word on it, and says, that's anger. Check. Done. Slaps a word on it, that's sadness. Check. Done. And if it can name it, it also believes it can fix it. We spend our life fixing problems. They're called solutions, not understanding that every solution, here's a problem, we find a solution, pardon me, We find a solution, and inevitably, it just creates more problems. And we continue to cut the head off the Hydra and have two grow back and wonder why we haven't arrived, why it hasn't finally happened. And we find ourselves needing higher and higher doses of a drug to get the same high, the same motivation, the same drive, because we're still operating on a premise where this, the mind, the personality, and the ego is trying to do the whole job. And it was never meant to. It was meant to be a collaborator, a partner, not in charge. Here's something really important to notice before we move to the next piece, is that two of these are present all the time, and one of these never is. Your heart and your gut, your nervous system and your soul, your higher self, is always present. That's where it lives. Your mind never is. What a cool partnership that the mind is always in the future or always in the past. It's the heart and the gut that are present right here, right now. What a cool partnership. Hey, I'd like a partner that can go into the future in a nanosecond and play out scenarios and see how it looks, go into the past for some info and some evidence and some different things that can help us prevent or whatever. And yet, when we become reliant on it, then we as a whole, this whole system, is reliant on not being present. And then we wonder why, even if we're able to manipulate our circumstances, manipulate our strategies, our approaches, and we actually accomplish what we wanted to accomplish, why is it that it always seems to be anticlimactic? Well, because if we're not able to be present and we create something that it itself is present, it doesn't get to feel like ours because we're not. Does that make sense? We're continually creating things in a dissociated state and wondering why we can't really love them once they're created. Well, anything created in a dissociated state will feel dissociated. So if we can start understanding just some of the basics about these three areas, if we can start understanding that what we're wanting to do with people, for people, has a little bit more involved than we may have realized. It might feel a little overwhelming in this moment. I promise you, when you start to understand some of these pieces, that whatever it is that you provide for people, how to get healthier, how to be able to sell more of a certain thing, how to be able to have a deeper relationship, whatever it is, it will feel so much more productive, so much smoother, and over time, so much less effort required to be able to do it, to be able to get through that. Those three areas in what we're doing, they have this thing that can unlock them that's unbelievable in terms of those goals. Let me finish that because I got a little sidetracked. Because this is, I think, the most critical thing, one of the most critical things to take from this whole messy visual is safety. Because I told you, when these three goals are aligned, no goal that you set has a chance of not being accomplished. So we've got safety, authenticity, it's for the heart, the soul, authenticity. And then for the mind, the personality, and the ego, it is creativity. When it feels like you are, or excuse me, yeah, no, that's it. When you're getting to be creative, authentic, and safe, you're unstoppable. Absolutely aligned. That right there is what we call a whole body mindset. I started a whole new coaching company from scratch a year and a half ago to honor this as the base. Rather than the dysregulated nervous system, dominant mind, personality, and ego that everything else seems to have been built on for the last 30 years. Sorry, I was just making sure I didn't miss anything in the chat as I was going through this. So when we have safety, authenticity, and creativity, you could probably put in that word expression. When those three things are aligned, watch out. Okay? Whether you're trying to have a deeper relationship with one of your kids or trying to sell a few more cars, whatever it is, those three things, unbelievable. Not just in the results that you're creating out there, but in your capacity to actually enjoy them inside of you. Your capacity to actually feel your life rather than keep reacting to the sensations of it. Okay, let's pause for a second. I think we can all agree that if I'm on point as I would normally be, that was a lot. Yes? Debbie, a lot? Okay, cool. Then let's take an a lot deep breath if we could. Okay, just taking a second to just... Okay. Cool. So that's one piece of the dilemma, is that there's more to it. The other I alluded to is the economic margin for error. You know, the way that I've been kind of fighting against the stream, against the grain, so to speak. And at Habit Finder, we invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in consultants and marketing strategists and all kinds of things that kept coming in and saying, hey, this is how you got to do it if you want to be more successful. The challenge is I didn't realize that we weren't getting clear enough in defining what successful for us would be. And it wasn't just an external result, it's how it would feel. How many of you have seen and even put together for yourself a plan for what would be successful, but as you got closer to it, it didn't have the feeling, it didn't have the alignment, it didn't seem to be the way you would feel good about accomplishing it. Anyone ever experienced that before? Yeah. Because there's a lot to this. We have a desire dilemma in this world, because most of the things we think we want, we've been programmed to want, we've been manufactured to want, which has been part of taking advantage of a dysregulated nervous system. So that's part of the work that I get to do, is help people find what their actual desires are, which is why I think goals should be experiments, not expectations. But we've got this economic margin for error that's allowed us to get away with what has been done for, actually, if we think about it in our globalistic economy based on consuming, for about the last half a millennia, about the last 500 years. And depending on the political scientists or the economic experts that you follow, we've got 5 to maybe 10 years for that era to come to an end, as it becomes too expensive for the United States, for example, to be the bully and the bodyguard to everybody else. So it'll be a really interesting shift to watch. I don't think it's something to be afraid of. In fact, it just aligns energetically the world to the way I've been trying to build my business for the last 20 years. So I'm pumped. I'm excited. And I hope to be able to share how to shift that a little bit with a few more people that it aligns with. Not out of scarcity, not out of this is the only way to do it. No, there's a lot of people that are going to still be doing it the old way, if you will, 10 years from now, and I'm sure they'll figure out a way to make it work. I just realized I'm not built for the make it work. I'm not built for the do whatever it takes. When I realized how much trauma is involved in being willing to do whatever it takes, or being an open book, like when you start to see the way trauma is actually driving that and the workaholism and the reality that you think you're actually experiencing, man, it's hard to go back. It's hard to go back when you realize that, like, oh, I used to think that was admirable and noble, and I still do when I see it in other people, because it's the best that they're doing. And I don't mean that from a patronizing, from like it is, because what I'm doing is the best that I can be doing. And I'm just here to find out if the best that I can be doing helps you with the best that you've been doing. So the last thing I want to talk about in terms of dilemmas is how you are oriented. This has been a game changer just in the last little while. Are you oriented to a person, or are you oriented to people? If you don't know the answer to that question, then you are gambling with your business strategy and your approach as a coach, as a facilitator, as a leader. Because if you are more oriented ideologically, which has also been shown to be biologically, to a person, the individual, the uniqueness, there is a certain way you're going to want to go about your day, and the type of business you're going to want to build, and the services you're going to want to provide, versus someone who is more about the collective. They think about the people. Okay, this is a risky thing to say, but it is psychologically, statistically researched and proven. The Democratic Party is dominantly people-oriented. Okay, the Republican Party is dominantly person-oriented, just to give you an idea of the difference between the two. I am not here to make any claims as which one is good or bad. That's wrong show. Okay, wrong show. But statistically speaking, that's true. Most of the people that are blue are people. Most of the people that are red are person people. How many of you know confidently, underneath your trauma, shame, and attachments, which one you are? Awesome. Very good. For the rest of you, you're going to want to learn how. There are certain questions that can be asked. We can do an interview together, and by the end of that, I can have a pretty good idea to tell you which one you are so that you can. Now, Dr. Ford just brought up a great comment, and it's true. We're both. But it's like introverted, extroverted. It's a subtle difference between the two, but for those that are different, it feels like a big difference. But we know it's only a little difference. So that's why I use the word not which one are you, which one are you oriented to? Your natural come from. And that can, for a lot of us, require some experimentation. Why? Well, our dysregulated nervous system got sold this idea that if we would be a people person, we would leverage our time and money and be more successful, and that's what we think we want. And so we convinced ourselves we're a people person. I want to build courses. I want to leverage time. I want to be able to build great marketing campaigns so that I don't have to be in the rat race anymore. Well, guess what? Some of you actually want the rat race. It actually fits your orientation a lot better. I'm one of them. I love the rat race. At least that's what it gets called by people who don't understand it. I remember I was on a webinar once. Okay, this was where this whole concept, like light bulb. I was on a webinar that caught my attention. I'd gotten a little jaded and like, whatever. Okay, here we go. I've seen a million of these pitches, but it was to a very unique audience. Okay, showed up on my feed and it was for healers and energy workers and things like that. How to be it mixed kind of the financial success, the Grant Cardone, Tony Robbins kind of energy with energy workers and healers, and I found that dynamic really intriguing. So I was like, okay, I'm game. I'm curious to see what this is. It turned out overall it was the same pitch. Okay, which is fine. It's a successful pitch. It works. That's why a lot of people teach it. But they said something that I've heard more times than I can count, but it landed so different. So different. Okay? Josie, Lisa, I'm sitting there listening to this webinar, and they get to the point where they say something that I can't count how many times I've heard it. They said, stop trading your time for dollars. And they presented it as a pain point. Have you ever heard this? Something like that? You've never heard someone say, don't trade your time for dollars. Stop chasing da-da-da-da-da. Whatever. I heard it and I went, oh my gosh. That. Oh my gosh, that's the missing piece. I'm listening to someone who's trying to leverage a technique and approach a strategy for a pain point I don't have. I love what I trade my time for dollars for. I love it. I am person-oriented. I am both in terms of capacity. And I have people-oriented things that I love to do. I love to speak to large groups. I love to build courses. I love that stuff. But what makes my heart beat, what makes my soul, my batteries regenerate, is getting one-on-one with another human being and going to places you wouldn't have been able to go otherwise. Going to sacred places with someone, even when you're just talking about how to increase your income, let alone the safety of their nervous system or the depth of their relationships. I am oriented to the person, and I love the people. So it's not one or the other, but it is, where is your natural orientation? When I learned that, and I started going back through 20 years of notes in business ideas and marketing ideas and started tweaking them to honor being person-oriented, I started working less and less and less and generating just as much income. It was wild. It was crazy to be able to be in alignment with that. Now, I I've worked with plenty of people who are people-oriented and been able to help them quite successfully. But I'm not going to lie, a lot of what I'm teaching now digs in that much more and gives that much more traction to a person-oriented person. So please know, you don't need to hop off right now if you're already sure that you're a people-oriented person. There's still going to be great information for you to get here. And I hope you've gotten some helpful information already. But for me, I realized there are not nearly as many resources out there on social media from influencers, gurus, marketing experts for person-oriented people as there are for people-oriented people. Most of the funnels, most of the marketing techniques are based on the idea of the numbers, of the people, of leverage. Why would you coach one-on-one for X number of dollars when you could make a course for this much, sell it for this small amount to this many people, and not have to do the work? Well, I can tell you why. Because that's not what charges my batteries. It's not what I love. And man, when you get into a place in you, the safety in your nervous system, where you realize that feeling like you make a lot more money is way cooler than actually making more money, as long as it's got a certain baseline. I'll give you that. Okay? I was shocked to find out recently that I make more money on an annual basis than a fraction of a percent of coaches. Because I don't make millions a year. I make a lot. But I don't make millions a year. But that's what you're getting pitched on. My funnel brought in $400,000 last month. Copy and paste it here. Just click here for this thing. You know what funnel made them that much? The one you just bought into. And if that's what you want to do, get people to buy into your buy-in to your buy-in, which is in some countries called a pyramid scheme, then rock and roll. But if your batteries are charged by transformation, if you really want to get in with somebody, it's different from what you're being taught. It's different. Let me tell you how it's different in 4 areas. This is where we're going to wrap up the night, okay? Lead acquisition, client acquisition, the actual engagement, or the coaching, the leadership, mentorship, whatever you want to call it. I'm just calling it engagement in general. And the self-work. Okay? So what's different in our more conscious economy, I think is a pretty simple, kind of cool way to call it. And then what's even more different, this is even more relevant. This is relevant to anyone, I believe, but it's even more relevant to the person-oriented person, because I believe that's what this next season of our economy and our society is built for. We've been in a people-oriented state of consciousness as a collective society, and now, those of you familiar with spiral dynamics, okay, we're now moving into a me, an individual level of consciousness. When we climb the ladder of consciousness individually or as a society, we climb as me, us. Me, us. And if there's something unhealthy in the us and we pass that and go to the us, now we have a chain of that dysregulation, of that lack of health. And so we have some really interesting things about the we that are healthy, some really interesting things about the we that are unhealthy, but they're all going to make an effect on the me, the individual, the person-orientation coming up. Now, stepping back, full confession, this could totally just be in my world and my reticular activation center making this sense. But I would say that's probably true. And if you have any kind of resonance with what I'm sharing, it could be true for you too. Because at the end of the day, we're all making this shit up anyway. All of it. Every last bit. I'm just hoping I've made some shit up that's helpful to you. That's my business. My business is not, this is the truth, this is the real, this and that is not. No, it's, hey, I made up some stuff and it seemed to be really helpful for me over the last several years and really helpful to thousands of people. So I'm hoping it might be helpful to you. Cool? Awesome. Let's talk about lead acquisition. Sound good? Okay. Any questions before I dive into that? Any questions about what I've shared? I'll stay on just a little bit afterwards for any additional questions as well. Chrissy coming in with the truth. Love it. Okay, excellent. All right, let's get some stuff we can use. Okay, have I shared anything that's been kind of expansive or like, wow, I hadn't thought about that, or that's really helpful, that's really interesting? So like if some reason Zoom shut down right now, you wouldn't be pissed that you spent the last 54 minutes with me? Okay, cool. Excellent. Because I want to give you some more. Lead acquisition. Let's get into a little bit more practicality. For a more, let's just say more conscious, more awakened person, if you will, which some of us can hear that and be like, ugh. But I'll tell you what, to be honest, I have started to fully own my role and my gift in this world of being a concierge to the weird. Okay? That's what I've decided I am a concierge to the weird. I think more of us are curious about the weird than ever before. Roxana, can you relate? Like there's weird stuff out there. And everybody's got a different name for it, and some of them were like, and and some of them were like, okay, I don't know about that. I've found that the people that I want to work with don't want to learn about the weird from weird people. Like the people that live in it, and I apologize if this is offensive to you, we're probably not a good fit. But if you can't get more than 30 seconds into a conversation with someone without telling them about their aura or their chakras or something like that, we're probably not going to be a great fit. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't love the ideas of those things and studying those things and being curious about those things. But I grew up as a business coach in a very practical hustle world, and I love to visit the foreign country of the weird. And I've learned some amazing things there, but I love to bring it back to the pragmatic, practical world and connect some dots for some people. But I've got some clients on here right now, and man, how many times have we been working through some really cool stuff, and then we'll go into something weird, and we'll both be sitting there being like, this is so weird. But why are we still doing it? Because it works. I've found that the weird is really effective, that we've lost some of our greatest technology in our own body, in our own ability to transform because of these unspoken social agreements that change how we breathe, change the sounds we can make, the movements that we can make, and the presence that we can actually have. And when you just invite a little bit more mastery back to that soul connection, that presence, that basic technology of the body as a human animal, then we can play all the other human games that much better. So, first key to acquiring better leads in this new season, this new golden age. When I was at Burning Man, there was this whole shtick about we are in a new golden age, and it was like this Cirque du Soleil type performance. And we're at Burning Man. We're out in the middle of nowhere with very little resources, and this troupe put probably $250,000 into this presentation. If I'd paid $500 for a ticket to see this presentation in Vegas, I would not have been disappointed. It was amazing. But there was all this symbolism of the golden age and all this stuff. So I'm just going to use that a little bit for, just imagine I have like glitter to throw, like this golden age. If you want to acquire leads that are more aligned for you, which means less effort for you and more exploration and fulfillment for both of you, win-win, the first thing you want to understand is, what is your bird song? What is your bird song? I learned this from Annie Lala. Annie Lala is Eben Pagan's wife. She is a relationship coach, a romance coach. She's incredible. I love her. She's so rad. Okay, and I heard her talking to a really good friend of mine who was single, about how to find people without needing to use the irritable death traps that dating apps can be. Okay, and she said, find your bird song. And I was like, that's interesting. And I listened to her explain that, and then I was like, oh my gosh, that's what you're going to want to do as a coach too. Your bird song is, what are the things that you do that make you feel most alive, make your soul sing. Okay, find those things, and most of those things, especially for the people-oriented guru, marketer, influencer, that's the ransom, right, Molly? You get that after you're successful. You get to go for a walk in the park in the middle of the day every day after you make a certain amount of money. You get to do these kinds of things and whatever. And I promise you, if you've got anything, well, Paul, my bird song costs a lot of money. I promise you, energetically, there are more affordable versions of that for us to leverage first, to then build the abundance and the success to create those as well. You don't have to pick one or the other. But it is interesting in a dysregulated nervous system, Michelle, to notice that if we can find an energetic version of it that doesn't cost as much, a lot of us will feel resistant to really indulging in it because we'll be worried that we won't have the motivation to create the one that costs more if we actually enjoy the one that doesn't. We'll lose our motivation. Why? Because that motivation is driven by pain, which is also part of the challenge of where we've been for the last several centuries as a society. But it's shifting. It's changing. So find your bird song and let that guide your networking, what we would have called networking. Okay? Because unless you have a very simple, like service-oriented, I'm a plumber, I'm a painter kind of thing, and it can be more than that, networking is not what networking used to be. You go to any meeting, any group designed for networking, and it's not very good at it. Some of them are good at transactional exchange, quid pro quo. The most successful people there are the ones who have made other people successful by swapping names and being able to leverage them in investment and whatever. And there's nothing wrong with that. And if any of you have had success and continue to have success with those, rock and roll. Congratulations. Keep doing that. I'm not here to tell you to stop doing something that's working for you. Why is it working for you? Primarily because you believe that it works for you. There's a little secret nugget for you, that how you feel about what you're doing is usually, and by usually I say that to help people not freak out, but I would say always, usually how you feel about what you're doing is more important than what you're actually doing. Okay? If you feel this strategy will work better for you, guess what? It will. If you feel this diet will work better for you, guess what? It will. For a time. So what we want to do is find a place in us where we can feel like it's going to work for us longer and more consistently. One of the best ways to do that is find your bird song and let that guide your connecting. If you love to be outdoors, find people that love to be outdoors and go do stuff with them. This last year I joined a Facebook group called Daring Journey Adventures. And we go on a few hikes a month in different places here in northern Utah, which if you've never been hiking in northern Utah, there is no shortage of incredible places to go explore up in the mountains. Okay, and I had no idea how many freaking waterfalls we have here. Goodness gracious, it feels like every hike ends in a waterfall in the mountains here. Okay, but with that, I didn't join it to get business. I didn't join it to get leads. But that's what I've received. Why? Because it was my bird song. I love hiking. I love being outside. Okay, I've got clients who love pottery. And so guess what they did? They found places to take pottery classes at their local community college or even at their local high school. And they did it because it was their bird song. And every single one of them had one of two things happen. One is they got more business from the place they were being able to connect to their bird song. Or two, the energy they got from being there added more business in every other area that they were. Even to the point, I had a client, found her bird song, had clients start to show up in other places in her life. She got too busy to keep doing her bird song, got focused on those clients, and guess what happened to her lead acquisition? Dried up. She tried to be more intentional about where she thought they were coming from, but she robbed herself of her bird song and it dried up. Find your bird song. And it doesn't have to be a singular, this is my bird song. I have lots of them. And I explore with them, I tweak with them, I play with them. But one thing I don't do is I don't spend a lot of time and money anymore going to events that are designed for networking. Unless that's my bird song. You're going to know it's your bird song because you're going there with very little expectation of results for your business, and you're going there more to connect with you and watch the way that allows you to connect with others and be able to genuinely walk away, and not as the martyr who sounds like they're saying the right things. Oh, I just wanted to connect with people, and then there's this part of you inside of you that's screaming, being like, yeah, but we also needed a sale. Okay, so it can take some practice, take some experimentation to trust this, and it's also a longer game. Everything else that gets sold out there is so you can get results tomorrow. But at what cost? It doesn't have to be all or nothing. I still work with clients on doing some of those things. Like social media would be the next thing I would say that you want to pay attention to. Social media is a great way. Okay, you can do it without it. Honestly, I haven't met a business yet that couldn't be more successful with working with me that had to use social media to do it. But it is low-hanging fruit. But here's a couple of things to keep in mind if you're going to do social media. Okay? Number one, choose one platform. Just one, please. Just choose one platform. Number one, okay? Number two is do it when you want to do it. Okay? Don't make yourself do social media. Now, I don't have time to go into it tonight, but there are a lot of ways to want to do social media from a better place. Okay? One of the challenges, Molly, I'm looking at you, is social media wasn't a platform until you joined the group that you became a part of that told you it needed to be your livelihood. And so you're trying to bring your person-oriented elements to it, but it was taught to you in a people-oriented business. I happen to know what organization and business Molly's a part of, and I know that it's a people-oriented business, as any network marketing company is. Every one of them are people-oriented, and if you're person-oriented, you will struggle in those businesses. I can show you how to be more successful in those businesses and honor your person-oriented pieces, but just know there's going to be a very real ceiling. And that you may find some regulation, some healing, and that's plenty for you. Awesome. That's a real thing. I don't mean that as a throwaway. That's a real thing. And I know a lot of you that have thought about doing something else, but you apply what it's felt like to build a person-oriented business in a people-oriented organization, and you've thought about that template in building your own thing, and that's not apples to apples. What it took for you to go against the grain is not what it's going to take for you to be in alignment, authenticity, and creativity with all three areas of you online. Okay? Those are the people I want to work with most of all. People who are starting to realize they're in a people-oriented or establishment organization, but they're person-oriented, and they've thought about doing their own thing, but haven't been able to figure out how to make that leap, how to have it make sense. And it doesn't have to be one or the other. I've got several clients who are in those and building something on the side, all of that. That's such a fun place to work. But if you're going to do social media, you don't have to post every day. You don't have to make your content strategic. All you've got to do is make your content competent and have your outreach be really warm. I would say something similar to those of you who want to do social media better, to the same thing to those of you who are going to go find your bird song. Don't go to get people. Don't do social media to get people. Do social media to express yourself. And if you can learn to express yourself competently and then engage other people with tremendous warmth and sincerity, case in point, how many of you have ever posted something on social media that was authentic and expressive? And you had people jump on there and make you feel like $1 million. They're like, this was so helpful. This was so great. And then you had the one person that jumped on there, and you can tell they were trying to compliment you, but there was almost like a one-upping. There was like this is my opportunity to borrow your expression to give more of my expression. I would tell the person who is noticing that a different answer than the person who did that. If you're the person who does that, stop it. Hardly anybody's attracted to work with you. We want to work with people who are imperfect. I was listening to a podcast recently where they said that a lady did a blender commercial for smoothies, and she did it perfectly. And then the next time she did it, and she spilled one of the smoothies. They had significantly more sales from the same infomercial. But the one she spilled performed better because it was imperfect. Okay? Imperfect and relatable aren't necessarily the same thing. I don't mean to react to that, Molly, but I'm sure you've been hearing relatable ad nauseum, and that's not necessarily the thing you're going for. Okay? If that happens naturally, great, but I wouldn't have that as one of your primary objectives. Okay? Because that's not your birdsong. Your birdsong's yours. If you're looking for the relatable birdsong, that's a different censorship. That's a different filter. It can still work. I'm just trying to show you what will work better. Okay? So we want to have content that's competent, and we want to have outreach that's very warm and engaging. Go make other people feel like $1,000,000. In fact, I would have at least a 5-to-1. 5 hours, if you will, of making other people feel amazing on social media, and 1 hour showing that you're competent in your birdsong, in your expression. And man, one of the reasons we get exhausted is because we're duplicitous. We're trying to make other people feel like $1,000,000 so that they'll notice us and sign up with us. We're trying to express something we care about, but really we care more about getting people's attention so that we can pay our bills. I'm not saying I can get you to a place where that noise doesn't exist. I just want to show you how to make it a little bit quieter. And just a little bit quieter can make what has felt like a grind to be on social media that much more difficult. Okay, last piece. I actually wasn't planning to share this with social media, but I think this is gold, people. This is gold. If you can master this phrase, you will save yourself so much more energy on social media. Okay, if you were one of the people when I said social media, you're like, ugh, talk about a necessary evil. This will lighten the load significantly. Okay, you ready? Oh, this is so good. This is so good. I want to show it to you. Okay, repeat and or write after me. You might be right. That's it. That's it. It's one of the most powerful social invincibility cloaks that you could possibly use, and social media is one of the places where our social distortions and our social opportunities are all tremendously magnified and sped up. If you can learn, you might be right. Oh, this is bullcrap. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. How many of us have gotten comments like that? Or have even had angst about posting on social media in fear of comments like that? Okay? And guess what a person-oriented person will not be able to do? They will not be able to not give a shit. I would go for the bigger one, but you get it, okay? You're not going to be able to do that and still honor what charges your batteries as a person. Okay? Because part of the reason you're a person is because you're a natural orientation to intimately care. You don't just feel the comment, you feel the very real human being who was trying to cut at you, and because of your natural scope of empathy, you feel deeply cut. And you can only ignore that for so long before you turn into a zombie and you lose the authenticity and the creativity in the process. So what was the point of being able to not give a whatever? But what if you were able to have a more non-dualistic capacity? What if you could trust your birdsong, and if someone doesn't agree with it, you have space in your nervous system to be able to genuinely say, and you don't always have to say it. It can just be a mantra for you. You might be right. If any of you struggle with confrontation and difficult conversations, it's also an incredible tool to have. You go and talk to someone who you're anticipating getting attacked or whatever, and just go, you might be right. You might be right. It's very disarming. And it's an incredibly powerful thing. So we could talk a lot more about that. If any of you are like, big deal, I don't really see the value in that, then I'd love to talk to you more about it another time. But I want to make sure we get through these last few pieces, and we're already running over just a little bit. Let's talk about client acquisition. Okay? So in lead acquisition, find your birdsong and let that dictate the things you invest your time and energy into to connect. Because it's going to... Anyone ever seen Stardust with, I think Michelle Pfeiffer's in it, and Gwyneth Paltrow? No, is it? No, it's not Gwyneth Paltrow, I don't think. Anyway, Stardust, great movie. This star falls from the sky and has this human embodiment, and when she feels safe and loved, she glows. That's what your bird song does. It glows, and when you glow, people want to see you. People want to connect with you. People want to feel who they feel like they are when they're with you. Okay? What's most attractive is how people feel about themselves around you, not how they feel about you. So that's why your birdsong is such an incredible game to play for lead acquisition, and why if you're going to apply that to social media, one platform and one platform only, and post from an expression place, something competently, and then spend more time loving on other people from an authentic place, making them feel seen, not making them feel seen so that you can slip in your promo. Okay? Because that's exhausting, both to do and to pretend you're not doing it. Client acquisition. Okay? This is where we're going to need to end tonight. I apologize because I want to make sure I honor everybody's time. But we're going to end with client acquisition, and these are huge. I'm going to give you a little bit of a condensed version, okay? But the key, the absolute key, and this has been talked about for a long, long time, questions. However, the approach to questions has been based in that dysregulated nervous system problem solution premise. So, of course, questions help and work and are way better than statements and whatever. But questions that speak to, if I could come back here really quick, just to kind of connect the dots here. Questions are for this part of us. Okay? And what's the language of this part of us? It's unspoken. Questions are the key to being sure that you have unspoken conversations with people, which I've found if you want to collaborate, dabble, and dance in the world of transformation, regardless of your industry, that you will want to know, you'll want to have the space in your nervous system, in your heart, to be able to have spoken and unspoken conversations. And I will tell you, if you think it's been difficult to figure out the right words to say for spoken conversations, the right things to say to help people, to serve them, to show up the right way, it is exponentially more difficult to have unspoken conversations. Because at least in spoken conversations, we can grab onto something called words. Unspoken conversations, it's more about space. It's sensations, it's presence. And it's so interesting to me, in my own experience, how terrifying space is. And I don't mean the final frontier. I mean like just the openness, just being there. The awkward kind of stuff. And I'll also tell you, learning to have unspoken conversations with people, I have never felt what most people call imposter syndrome with the amount of intensity that I have when learning to have unspoken conversations with people. And it's not either or. I don't think I've ever had a totally unspoken conversation with someone. No, that's true. I've had some events, some retreats and things where I've had a completely unspoken, but they're rare. Most of the interactions that I have with people is spoken and unspoken. And there's a couple of great questions I'm seeing in the chat. So if you can bear with me, I'm gonna make sure that I get to those. So what we're talking about here is questions, but I'm gonna give you two questions. These two questions have made me more money than anything else. Not any other questions, anything else. Okay? I would put these two questions at the top of the list to the millions of dollars that I've generated as a coach. Okay? The first question, what do you want? Now the tricky part is I don't teach a lot of mimic stuff, but this is a mimic thing. It's not, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? It's, watch my hand. What do you want? Your voice sinks to the depth that you want them to consider. Now, there's a whole way to package that question that I don't have time to go into tonight that allows their autonomy to be honored, and that's so critical in sales. So critical. You've either got to be really, really good at manipulation and figure out how to make yourself feel really good about it, or you're not going to be able to compete with someone who is unless you're able to honor someone's autonomy, trust you to be able to hold a container, to be able to ask questions that will feel awkward, that will feel strange. And I've been doing this for years. I had one earlier today, and it felt awkward and it felt strange, but I have a spaciousness in my nervous system to not react to that. The permission of elephant talk and other things. So what do you want as the first one? The second question: what's the toughest thing about being you? There is not a single person that coaches with me that wasn't asked these questions. I use these when I'm out doing my bird songs and connecting with people. I use these in Zoom discovery sessions and consultations. I use these in my active coaching practice. I'll check in. Might have been a little while. Update the software. Hey, right now in this moment, what do you want? Hey, right now in this moment, what's the toughest thing about being you? Again, there's some really important ways to package those questions, but even without that, I think that you could start using those two in your conversations with people. Okay? I use the what do you want more often out and about than I use the what's the toughest thing about being you. But in the intimate private conversations, the what's the toughest thing about being you is a powerhouse unspoken conversation if you know how to conduct it, if you've got room in your nervous system. Because it's not just a right now, okay? Right now, this is, again, this full circle. Right now, all of you are hearing these two questions. Come on back. All of you are hearing these two questions in this area. It's an idea. It's a concept. And you can create all kinds of emotional responses to that. Oh, that's amazing. Oh, I can't wait to try that. But until we're able to integrate all three of these, that's the catch. What's the catch, Paul? That's the catch. Is that these can't just be something that you say. Okay? You need the nervous system to support the unspoken conversation. You need the spaciousness and the clean container to be able to have the unspoken conversation. And the mind is very helpful to get to the conversation. The inspired ideas, the expressions, the creativity, to be able to have some people to do this with. And what's great is you can be more successful in a lot of businesses without needing a lot of people to have this conversation with. We're developing some frameworks right now that are taking things like challenges. Anyone heard like sign up for my 5-day challenge? Developing right now challenges that are built for person-oriented people because they're very different. The idea of most challenges out there are all people-oriented. So if you're more person-oriented, I'd love to show you how to do that. So those two questions are key. The second piece for client acquisition is setting up an interaction that is choosing, not chasing. This one's scarier. Okay? This one sometimes looks like having an incredible conversation with someone, deeply connecting with them, and being able to tell they're interested in your product, your service, or working with you, and not letting them sign up. Depending on what you're offering, this is an incredibly important step to take. Okay? Depending on what you're offering, depending on what your objectives are. So there's an asterisk on this. But for me as a coach, it is absolutely essential. Because I want to play in the realm of transformation with someone. And if I have an emotionally bound and deep conversation with someone and I enroll them from that peak, guess what we are now chasing for the rest of our coaching engagement? We're now chasing that peak. And so my job is no longer to be able to help them in the world of transformation, the counterintuitive, the unspoken conversations, the deeper work. It's just chasing the high. It's just giving them the next emotional high, the next peak experience, and then hopefully giving them enough words to that third area that they can justify feeling like there was an ROI even though they weren't able to actually execute it. So when you have a deep connection with someone and it's the first time you're having it and you pump the brakes and you get to stop and say, hey, Roxana, I would imagine that this has been a helpful conversation. I've really enjoyed connecting with you. Has it been helpful tonight, Roxana? Awesome. I'm so glad. I would love to talk to you about what it might mean to work together, but this is not the place. Tonight here, that's not where this happens. Even if you were pulling out your credit card right now and trying to say, I want to sign up with you, it's not an appropriate place. Because Roxana, what I want you to do is I want you to get to be with this conversation we had tonight, the spoken and the unspoken parts of it. And even more important, based on what you shared with me that you want and the toughest things about being you, it's really important that you talk yourself out of working with me before you decide to. Because that right there is going to be some of the most important parts of the curriculum for you and I to use and work through. So if we just go from an amazing conversation and to a yes, we're going to miss the deeper work that I've got a feeling you're actually looking for. Is that fair? Okay. Warning, that can't be a tactic. You can use it that way, and if you're person-oriented, it's going to feel real poopy. Okay? If you're people-oriented, and you just use it as a tactic, it's not going to feel good either. If you've rationalized and justified all the manipulative techniques you can use, you could use it as a tactic, and it works. Okay? When it becomes a tactic, it gets stripped away of some of its most beautiful elements, and it's called a takeaway. A lot of people would hear what I just did and go, oh, I know that. That's a takeaway. I promise you, it's different. I promise you, you do it the way I would teach you to do it, with the arc of the questions that I gave you and a few more. There's 4 that I use. Okay, I gave you the 2 most powerful, but there's 4 that I use. It's not a takeaway. It looks like it. If it was on a script, you'd read it like it. But when you incorporate all 3 areas, it has a different impact on you, has a different impact on them, and more importantly, it has a different impact on the nature of your relationship with them throughout the time you get to work with them and beyond. Okay? The other pieces are the engagement, where I wanted to talk to you about somatic access, which was a game changer. Somatic access is how you start dancing with all 3 areas. And that requires slower and simpler approaches, which if you have any workaholic tendencies, is a horror show. It's terrifying. The idea of getting rid of your workaholic tendencies sounds so great in concept, but it's scary to actually do it. Being on the other side of it, I can tell you, it allows you to play some of the most fun games I've ever played with the universe. Okay, for the last little while, I've been playing this game. Can I tell you what it's called? The game is called What's the Least Amount of Work I Can Do to Qualify for the Abundance of the Universe? And it is a rad game to play. What is the least amount of work I can do to qualify for the abundance of the universe? Okay? It's interesting to get on this side of it. On the other side of it, on the workaholic side, easy was a bad word. That's what lazy people want. That's what bad people want. They want life to be easy. Oh, that makes sense now that I'm over here and see, oh, you have to believe that to want to keep playing that game. Otherwise, you just wither away and die. But it is the most effective way to play the workaholic game. But if you want to get out of that game, okay, which is not everybody actually wants to. Otherwise, you probably would have by now. But I could show you a couple of ways to find out if you might be willing to take the next step to get out of it. But I can tell you the idea of getting out of it is not enough to actually walk through it. It's hard. It's really a really challenging thing to walk through. And then the last piece is the self-work. This is the biggest unspoken joke in the world, is it not? I have a really good friend and colleague who works with people on systems and automation, and she is an absolute wizard. Not just with the automation, but with her grasp of and her charisma and her ability to not just do the cool stuff, but to really just zero in on the stuff that's actually going to matter to a particular person. There's all the things she could do, and then there's what she actually does. And she's incredible. We were talking the other day, And she said, Paul, I've got a lot of clients. And why is it that it's all the coaches that I work with that have the most limiting beliefs? Well, I'll tell you why. One reason is because that's what qualifies them to go into those places with people, is their insecurity, is their limiting beliefs. That qualifies them to be able to hold space. However, because of the idea of being a coach and the way that it's been taught to you in this dysregulated nervous system and this problem solution win-lose kind of way, the way that that's been taught to you is you have learned the drug of explanation. And you get a high from being able to do what most coaches do, and that is externalize your deepest issues. And what you end up doing more often than not is you attract clients that allow you to avoid your deepest issues, so they're on the other side of it, and or you attract clients that you hope you'll somehow be able to solve your deepest issues in them by proxy, like a parent would fulfill their life ambitions through their child. And that's an exhausting place to operate from if you really want to show up in a clean container for being able to hold space for someone in the world of transformation, regardless of what your industry and your approach is. Okay? We're way past time. So I want to wrap this up just in one simple way. And that is, do you want to talk more? Do you want to have a deeper conversation about how to do this? The conversation is free because that's what's appropriate, I believe, from this platform. From where we are, and I'm not here to, like I said, this was not a calculated presentation to have a big offer right now. So I'm not going to give you one. But I'd be happy to have a conversation with you. If you got this far and you want to talk a little bit more about this and whether this would be a good fit from you, the end of that conversation may involve an offer for an investment. It might involve an opportunity for one of the 5 spots of the group of people in this kind of space that I'm going to be personally mentoring in a group environment, but also in a one-on-one environment, because that's what person-oriented people want to provide. And it would not make sense for me to teach you how to do that without having some of that in the equation. I can tell you it would probably be more affordable than working with me in one-on-one. But there's also some opportunities to be able to do that at a scale that might make more sense for you. So not here to give you prices, not here to give you today onlys, simply to say that if you want more, either go to the link that I'm going to give you or put yes in the chat. That'll do the same thing. I'll see in the transcript that you want me to follow up with you and have that and set up a time for that conversation. Or you can go to, let me see if this will automatically populate. Oh, it will. Good. So if I come here and go to meeting group chat and go book consult. Oops. Sorry, it's a little weird to be typing from all the way over here on this podium. Why didn't it work? Oh, because I X'd it out. Book consult down. There we go. So that link, wholebodymindset.com/consult, will allow you to book on my calendar for us to explore this a little bit more, to be able to find out if, and maybe that conversation's all you needed to clarify a couple of things. Rock and roll. If there's more, I'll tell you what your options are. And if it's a no-go, you're not able to make that happen, no problem. I've been in this business a long time. There are very few people that really can't figure it out if it's in alignment. But also, I hope you understand just from what I've been teaching tonight that that's going to be a very mutual discovery. Not a hard close, not a whatever, not a peak experience so we can spend the rest of our time together in personal mentorship or group mentorship or a hybrid of the two, chasing that. You also notice that as a person-oriented person, I still love groups. They've just got to be small. So while I like to make things a little bit more affordable for people by involving groups, it's never going to be very big. For me, that's typically 5 to 8 people. So, All right, we had some great questions in here, and so I'm going to backtrack to those a little bit. And then if you have any extra ones, you can put those in the chat as well. I know I saw a couple in here. What is the connection to make a sale? People can connect and appreciate services, but not ready to pay for more help. What is wrong? Trouble getting sales? Am I not showing authority or enough of a benefit to their pain? Great, great question. So a lot of these dilemmas, a lot of these challenges are based on the old system, which is still going to be around. Okay, there's a lot of old systems that don't, like the newspaper. The newspaper is still around. I would call that an old system, but there's still enough people that want a newspaper that it's still around. So it'll be around for a long, long time. It's difficult to answer some of these questions in terms of, am I not showing enough authority? I'm not a big believer in showing authority. I'm a big believer in having a healthy balance of competence and warmth. And it's not hard to be too warm, and it's not hard to be too competent and stoic. And a lot of what's taught out there either jumps to one side or the other. It's either saying, here's how to be really warm, or here's how to be really competent. And competent and intelligent are not necessarily the same thing. You don't have to have fancy words. You don't have to have all the answers. These are energetic things. But the other challenge, not enough of a benefit to their pain. You won't need to provide a lot of convincing about the benefit you can provide if they feel like their pain was really witnessed, really understood. If they felt really witnessed, they're going to want to invest to get more of that. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes, regardless of the product or service that you're providing. I had a client who someone came up to, had a conversation with her and said, at the end of an hour-long conversation, said, I don't know what you do, but I want you to do it for me. So that may not happen with everybody, but if you can lean towards that, it takes a lot of pressure off of the game we have been playing. Didn't have the words before, but I learned I'm a person in and on a people world. What a relief to find. Yay, I love that, Josie. I love that. I spent so much time feeling like I was doing it wrong when I didn't realize that the majority of what I was seeing and what I was being taught was for people-oriented people, because those are generally the people who are great at the big marketing and the big books and the big ideas. I'm terrified to write a book because I'm sure that by the time I finish it, I'll disagree with half the stuff I wrote. Because as a person, I'm like, it feels like this constant evolution, and like nothing has to be right because it's just like what might be today kind of a thing. And I thought that was wrong. It made it feel impossible for me to niche down, for me to know my ideal client. Who's your ideal client? I don't know, someone that I connect with. Well, that's not enough. It needs to be clear. It needs to be this person, this, and this. And it was so frustrating. Just like you said, you just feel alien, And it wasn't because there was anything wrong with you. It was just because you have a different orientation. And what's great is it doesn't require a rehab and overhaul. It's little tweaks to a lot of the stuff that's already out there, and a lot of trust in you to hold to those little tweaks. That's the harder part. Is conceptually, it's like, oh, that's just a little tweak, but your nervous system would be like, but that won't work, or oh, that's not as good as it was, or we're doing it wrong. Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. I went back up a little ways, and I think there might have been a couple of questions, but I think they're a little, I don't want to spend the whole time scrolling to try and find them, but anyway. Please repeat what number 3, 4, and 5 are, just the topic words. Victory, if you can clarify that. Yeah.
You went through the list really fast, so I've got 1 and 2, but I have 6. The self-work.
What were 1 and 2?
Okay, so 1 is the lead accusation.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Lead accusation.
So the topics I wanted to cover tonight were 1, lead acquisition, which primarily is your bird song.
Yeah.
And then what I didn't have time to, but what I teach people is there's actually there's two specific breath works depending on your nervous system orientation that I teach people to use to be able to connect to their birdsong what some people, it's weird. Okay, I already said I'm concierge to the weird, to manifest, to attract clients on a quantum scale. There's actually a very specific breath work you can do to align with that. But we didn't have time to go into that tonight. And then the social media, that's all part of the lead acquisition. Number 2 is client acquisition. So there's getting the leads, getting what I call the orbit going. So you have lots of stars and comets and planets orbiting you. That's lead acquisition. Then the draw to have them land and come to your planet is the client acquisition. And that's the questions, the chasing versus choosing. And then the third one was engagement. So the actual coaching process. Regardless of what kind of coach or guide or leader you are, I think if you can understand somatic access the way that I've been taught and learned that technology, it's a game changer regardless of what you do. If you want to play in the realms of transformation, regardless of your industry, that's huge. The last one, the fourth one, was self-work. That was essentially put like, who's your coach? Not who's your marketing coach, who's your strategy coach. Who's your coach for holding a really clean container for the deeper self-work that seems to create more limiting beliefs than success in people who want to facilitate some of the deepest containers for other people? The people that are naturally qualified for transformation are their own worst enemy, unless they can do self-work a different way. And that's a really important part of what I want to teach people how to do, because it's too easy as a facilitator to loop in explanation, to compensate with explanation. And it robs you of finding your safety, authenticity, and creativity, and it limits your ability to draw that out of others. So those were the 4 topics I was hoping to cover tonight in terms of the actual tools. And then we talked about who is this for, transformation, and the dilemmas of the 3 areas, the economic margin for error, and being person-oriented versus people-oriented. So,
thank you so much.
Yeah. Raul, can you repeat the phrase "least amount of work to access the"? Oh, yeah. So, is Raul still here? Okay, I'll put it in the chat for you as well. Let me send this to everybody.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. I'm gonna type it out for everyone as I say it, just for anyone that wants it. So it's let me move my keyboard up a little bit so this isn't as challenging to type. There's a little lip on my podium that makes this difficult. What is the least amount of work I can do to qualify for the abundance of the universe? I think I did that right. What is the least amount of work I can do to qualify for the abundance of the universe? That's a very fun game to play.
I have one more question, actually, Paul.
Please.
Okay, I missed the word, and it was good. You said have them choose, not
chase.
Thank you.
Yep. The old system is based on chasing. And we're much more willing to chase in a consumer-driven economy, and that consumer-driven economy is shifting significantly fast right now. And if you only know how to chase, you're going to have to run faster and faster and faster to get the same net result. I just put the link in again for booking a time with me. I'll also send this recording out to anybody that wanted to review this a little bit more deeply. But wow, okay, we're well over time. Thanks for hanging around, everybody. So yes, I will be sure to send the recording out to anybody that wants it. Please book a time on my calendar for those of you that want to explore what this looks like more specifically for you. I can be a little bit more direct with some of these things and answer more questions specific to you in that one-on-one session as well. And then hopefully, whether it's sometime soon or in the future, tonight and that one-on-one conversation will lead to getting an opportunity to work together. I'm really okay if it's this week or next year, because it'll happen when you're ready for it based on how I've been doing this. So part of being ready for it is being ready to not be ready, but we can talk about that too. So awesome. Excellent. Thank you, everybody. Much love. And we'll see you when you choose. We'll see you on the next one of these, or we'll see you hopefully for an individual conversation, which again, I don't want that to be a abuse of my time or a waste of yours, but please err on the side of let's make it beneficial for you. If you're sitting there going, there is no way I would invest in $1 in myself ever, and it's never going to change, then don't. Okay, let's just disqualify that right off the bat. But if you're like, oh, I bet it's this amount and I couldn't possibly do that, don't let something silly like that stop you from having the next conversation that could lead to the next amazing thing in your life. Just know that it might be happening slowly, so it doesn't have to happen right now. But let's have the conversation as if we're going to plan for when it's going to happen. Okay? Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful night. Much love.